Good afternoon, everybody. It's just gone 12 o'clock, so we're going to make a prompt start on today's call. Welcome to today's webinar on London's Primary Care Automation Gap Grants Programme. Can I just ask everybody to please switch off their video and go on mute if they'd be so kind. So my name is Dennis Dignan. I lead the Digital Transformation Technology Programme at the Health Innovation Network, and my team and I are supporting Matt's team at NHS England London Digital First Region in coordinating the delivery of this grants programme. So thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to attend. We hope today's session will provide some useful information and give you all an opportunity to ask plenty of questions. So we've saved plenty of time for that at the end of today's session. So just for those of you who have just joined the call, if we can please ask you all to please take the call. We have a lot of people on the call today, which is great, but I think we may not have selected the best technology for today's event. So we really encourage you, if you wouldn't mind staying on mute and staying off camera, that would be really helpful. We'd also ask you throughout today's session to post questions into the chat, and please uptick those questions that you'd like to see prioritised when we get to the Q&A session. So we'll not be inviting comments or questions during the presentations, so please don't use the raise hand function. We'll aim to answer as many of the questions as we can get through in the Q&A session, and those that we don't get around to covering we'll pick up in an FAQs section in the guidance document, which will be released next week, which we'll talk about a little bit more. This session is being recorded. Slides and the video will be shared after the event, so please do share with your colleagues that aren't able to make it. And the final point around housekeeping. So this is a primary care focused event, and we're conscious we've got quite a few colleagues from industry on the call today, which we very much appreciate, but we kindly ask that industry colleagues refrain from posting messages about specific products or specific questions, and that we try and use this forum to allow our primary care colleagues to get to ask the questions that they'd like to go through. So that's all the housekeeping I have. So I now would like to hand over to Matt and I, who's going to give us a little bit about the context around this programme. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Nye. I'm the Director for the Digital First Transformation Programme across London for primary care for NHS England. And one of our key objectives of our programme for the next couple of years is how do we improve care productivity efficiency across primary care and reduce the workload pressures for both the clinical and non-clinical staff across primary care, to enable them to be able to support patients more time using digital tools. So this is one of our key priority areas for our programme over the next 2 years, and demonstrating the benefits of automation and the potential scope of it. Because automation isn't very widely used in primary care, it's mainly used in the private sector, and it started becoming a big usage in acute. So I'm really excited that there's over 100 of you already on this webinar, and we're going to be sharing the materials wider, and that you're interested in this grants award and working with us in partnership with the HIN over the next year. So the big challenge, as we see it, is it's well documented that within primary care has constantly been under pressure for many years from growing demand and challenges with recruitment across the whole workforce, both clinical and non-clinical. And we know there is no magic fairy dust to solve all of the challenges in the foreseeable future. There's lots of learning and strong evidence from the private industry and acute health sector that robotic processes can save time on repetitive tasks, and bots and software can mimic human actions once they're told what to do. And one of the other benefits of bots is that they can work 24/7 in the background, accessing data, running rules, logging into system, reviewing records, emails, letters, filing results, to even reviewing records and data to highlight patients that may need support. So there's lots of opportunities for automation and software bots to support primary care, and we want to explore those opportunities through this grants award over the next year. Our vision for this is, through the pilots, we will show software automation can improve existing processes and can save both clinical and administrative time through automating the high repetitive tasks delivered just like our human counterparts. We envisage that the pilots will provide multiple benefits across patient pathways, improving processes, but the core objective, and that will be in the submission as well, is we do need to demonstrate that the automation can save clinical and admin time and free up resources to focus on other priorities, and where needed to fill the gap where resources are stretched to reduce the burden on staff. So demonstrating the saving of time is completely crucial to demonstrate back to practice and PCNs. It's worth investing locally in these resources going forward. So you've got a bot or automated software supporting their work on a day-to-day basis and supporting delivery of care. So that's sort of my introduction to it. We are very passionate about it within the Digital First programme, and looking forward to working with you over the next year. And I will now hand over to Ashley to provide an overview of automation and some of the types of processes that we're looking at exploring within this awards.
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, I'm Ashley. I work as a project manager in the digital transformation team in the Health Innovation Network. I'm here to give you a bit of a kind of automation in primary care 101. Now, I'm by no means a developer or a technician, so my task really over the course of the work with the Digital First team is to be able to understand the market, understand what automation is, and actually transfer that to the needs of primary care and see how that can match up. So that's what we're going to do over the next few slides in terms of propositioning what automation can do in primary care. So essentially, to kick us off, what is process automation? Some of you might have varied kind of knowledge bases on this. So generally, automation technologies tend to be software-based solutions that have got the aim of emulating a human execution of a process. There's a couple of variations and ways that they can do this. So many of you might have heard of robotic process automation, which is kind of bot focused and means that the kind of solution performs its tasks on a computer, and in some cases is using the same interface as a worker would, so executing the same kind of clicks, the same kind of types, opening applications or using keyboard shortcuts. And then you've got a kind of another arm of it, which is kind of automation softwares that are non-bot focused, which you can use configured softwares to interpret and manipulate data, for example, to process transactions and trigger responses based on a defined criteria that's been set within that software to communicate across other digital systems. And these softwares sometimes include aspects of intelligent automation and artificial intelligence. So automation scenarios at the moment tend to range from something as simple as generating an automatic response to an email, which might be something that you're already doing with using AccuRx, for example, to deploying a number of bots that might be carrying out complicated tasks that have been programmed to automate jobs within an electronic patient record system, for example. And current process automation solutions mostly target low repetitive tasks, low risk repetitive tasks, where the more advanced solutions aim to support clinicians in maybe making clinical decisions or managing pathways. But the key kind of focus point here is that it's not to replace any staff member, it's not to replace any clinical decision, it's actually to remove some of that burden and help support clinicians to make decisions and manage pathways, or remove a burden within administrative time. So the ultimate aim being to free up clinical and administrative time, allow clinicians to work at the top end of their licenses, and administrators to focus on more complex and value-adding tasks. I could get that slide. So this is kind of a little bit about the tech, and there's no need to go into mass detail of this. You'll get these slides if it's useful, but if there's a bit of reference, there is the RPA systems, the bots that focus on that human execution, as we discussed. There's then the intelligent automation, which kind of are intelligent systems within softwares that increase the scope of automation beyond those simple rule-based tasks that bots carry out, and then towards the more complex end, the AI, where it's kind of bringing in processes that kind of include things like speech recognition and visual perception to help support decision making by the computer system. So a varied range of complexity, but not super important to kind of focus on. And the slides will be shared, yes, for sure. And so process automation in primary care. So there is some focus areas. This has basically been done through some research and engagement across the nation, essentially, around what's going on in automation in healthcare and in primary care specifically. We're frequently kind of reported opportunities for automation, whether that there's pieces of work already existing or that there is knowledge that automation can address these things and work being done to get there. So call and recall being a huge one that has been mentioned, varying all the way through kind of to coding from clinical records and all of the clinical letters, should I say, and all of the things in between that you can see there. So quite a large range of use cases, and some of these tasks in particular, you know, triage, data management for things like reporting, QoF reporting, all quite kind of time consuming tasks, which sometimes don't necessarily need that human interaction. It can have a system kind of talking between different data systems and pulling bits of information together to kind of streamline that human execution of it when it is that they need to come and add those kind of final pieces to the jigsaw puzzle, let's say. So if we move on to the next slide, and look at kind of some more of the more specific automation primary care goals and kind of outcomes that we're looking for. And this is based upon some needs articulation work and surveys we've done across London over the last kind of 4 to 5 months. So in terms of the goals and what automation can achieve in primary care, Matt mentioned quite a few things there in terms of being able to reduce that administrative burden and save time for staff, and that administration doesn't just relate to the administrative staff or the practice managers, but actual clinical staff and clinical admin time as well. Thus improving the efficiency of the workforce, being able to work smarter, spend less time on these kind of laborious, burdensome tasks that kind of a tick checklist tasks that need doing but don't actually add a lot of your value or use the kind of full capacity of the staff within your organization. And then that improving staff experience, you know, not having to spend time going through lots of data sheets and lots of kind of laborious processes, and being able to focus on the more value adding things that you can do to improve patient experience, essentially offering more headspace to focus on the more complex tasks and improve the efficiency and the processes that patients are engaging with. Obviously, there's an element of using these systems that have got these rule-based, these kind of software-based assurances to improve that process assurance and reduce human error. And we've seen a lot that obviously long-term condition management can be quite complex within primary care, especially with patients with comorbidities, things like the recall, repeat prescriptions, etc. And health checks that need managing over a long period of time, where these systems can be programmed to help send responses and engagements out to manage this and create flags for clinicians to take reviews at appropriate times. So that kind of improved data and information capture and quality management really being very integral to this. So obviously, as we said before, it can kind of cover lots of clinical tasks as well as lots of administrative tasks, and the range is very broad. The kind of most challenging non-clinical and clinical tasks that we discovered through a recent survey, so it was kind of QoF and other reporting, patient recall and screening of annual health checks, this being specific to the London region, as I said, and patient feedback, and then that kind of clinical end being the prescribing and referral processes. That again can take quite an additional amount of time if there's patients with comorbidities or long-term condition monitoring plans. So there's lots of sides around this. There's lots of achievements that can be made with automation to help manage this and help reduce the kind of burden of tasks that go alongside all of these things. So if we go to the next slide, we are currently about to release a process automation in primary care report that'll include some of this stuff around the needs articulation, as well as the kind of engagement we've done nationally, but also will give a bit of an overview of where the market lies, what automation suppliers are out there and what they're achieving so far. So that will be coming out for you to kind of peruse and use to your benefit in terms of looking to engage with suppliers. Obviously, we've not managed to cover the breadth of all of the suppliers that are out there, but just to give you a starter indication of people that you might want to follow up with. But to give a bit of an overview of the market maturity and the kind of things you want to look out for, so when engaging. So kind of integration obviously being really key. So out of the 21 solutions that we reviewed, there's 13 that kind of said that they definitely already have current integration or interface with EMIS and System 1. So looking at what suppliers can engage and integrate with the clinical system that you're using or want to use as for the specific use cases you have. Support mechanisms, so all providers being able to kind of describe various support arms for implementation, for issue resolution and system updates. That's really a key thing to kind of look into in terms of how you're going to be supported through the development of this pilot and implementing it. Configurability, so again, another key thing. So all the providers that we've spoken to kind of describe degrees of configurability, being able to kind of tweak their product to match the local need and the local process. But obviously it's something to have a conversation about during your engagements to find out kind of what's the resource that's required to take on that configurability, how long does it take to adapt these solutions to your needs. And then the primary care sites, so 13 of the 21 already have confirmed kind of live or pilot sites that we engage with. Again, there might be more out there, but just the knowledge that they already exist and being able to connect with other people that have used those solutions is quite useful, obviously leading into the evidence that is out there. So making sure that the companies that you're engaging with have got some kind of evidence either through pilots or shareable case studies and evaluations. As I said, we'll share kind of that report that also includes a bit of an overview of the suppliers we've engaged with for you guys to use going forward. But if we move on to the next slide, we're going to just give some overview of some of the case studies that we've put together within this, just to give you a bit of an indication as to the difference in using, say, a robotic process automation solution and what needs to be done within that and what can be achieved with it versus kind of an automation software solution. So this case study is based upon the North West London Digital First team, who are developing a diabetes call and recall automation birthday bot, so a robotic process automation solution. And the use case for this is the birthday bot aiming to automate the end-to-end process of annual recalls for patients with diabetes. This being based on a mapping of the conversations that the Digital First team have had with clinicians across the area. The aim is to reduce the time that it's taking to do that, which is around 17 hours every week, which is quite a lot of time. So they're currently going through kind of the development phase of this and mapping out what that process looks like and working with the provider to develop this this bot. But the expected benefits are the clinical time saved, improved efficiency within the practice, the standardization of a recall process across North West London, and reduction in incorrect patient recall. So all basically also leading into kind of improved patient experience and improved workforce planning and that kind of efficiency overall of how that process is working. So if we move on to the next part, so just wanting to highlight some of the practicalities and some of the things that you might want to think about the realistic version of kind of what you might be doing engaging with a robotic process automation solution. So some of the challenges and tasks have been actually process mapping being carried out for the pilot and across further pilot practices, but across other EMIS practices in North West London as well, with the aim of building essentially the ideal process for the bot to follow, taking into account all the kind of complexities of the pathway requirements across those different sites, and engaging with kind of lots of different stakeholders across clinical teams, digital teams, administrative stakeholders, to really capture the needs for this process and truly identify what can be automated and how well it can be done. Also, again, understanding the clinical system landscape. So across the areas that if you're doing this at a PCN level, who's using what system and how that landscape affects what solution you can use and those integrations that we talked about already. And then understanding kind of the more detailed process rules for the bots to follow. So working with a clinical team to develop a list of targets that need to be reviewed. So whether it be the HbA1c through to the cholesterol, etc. And within that, creating some assurance. So obviously these systems are new essentially within primary care. They exist. Process automation is quite frequently used in other industries, as I think Matt and Dennis have said. Well, it's quite a new thing, and it's quite a tentative thing in terms of, can we trust this? This is patients that we're putting at risk here. This is our kind of clinical reputation, etc. So defining a process kind of definition document that will be sensor checked and across practices to ensure that people are comfortable with using these solutions and that they're going to be safe and support the goals that you're looking to achieve. So that is kind of one version of what's been developed with a robotic process automation and the kind of ins and outs of things that people have had to think about. This is kind of adding on to that. It's a different solution that was used to automate call and recall processes for NHS health check programs in Barking and Dagenham. And the reason we're just highlighting a bit of this is because they kind of actually evaluated what the findings are and versus the other one being expected benefits. So there was cost savings that kind of stemmed from the reduction in kind of telephony, different materials and management and administrative costs associated. And there's been some independent evaluation that demonstrated the system actually improved 40% in terms of the actual patient uptake of NHS health check. And the service was essentially demonstrated that it was able to effectively kind of reach people in deprived areas in the same way that it was with people with in more kind of affluent areas. So didn't kind of cause any health inequalities. If we just go through the next couple of slides, I'm going to go very quickly just with time in mind, but obviously we're going to be sharing these slides and you can also contact us for more information. So please don't worry if you've got any questions, also pop them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. But this is basically a different system, automation of an automation of patient registration using a more kind of automation software solution. And that is kind of purpose built and doesn't need that kind of bespoke bot development. So this was focused on patient registration, as I said, lots of benefits that came through it for practice staff in terms of being able to collect and code patient characteristics and increasing the kind of GP to GP transfer rate. Lots of kind of reduced time spent on actually doing this, so kind of gone from spending 25 hours a month to kind of 0 hours a month on actual patient registrations now, and some cost savings within that as well. I think 28% cost reduction, saving about £106 a month. So we've got a really good net promoter score with those that engage in it, and patients actually seeing an increase in speed of their registration from 36 hours to 12 hours. So and rated the solution really well. So if we go to the next stage, challenges with this is obviously the kind of potential loss of admin continuity of care. You know, you have that kind of human interaction, you understand the complexities of a patient and a person themselves. So these complex registrations where kind of patients need to be contacted are handed back to the practice when they're flagged within the system to manage that kind of on a more human level. There's a few tasks that go alongside it in terms of the onboarding. It is quite a quick process for this, as you can see there, and I won't go into too much detail so you have we don't run over too much. And there's tasks that go alongside it in terms of, you know, making sure that you're reviewing emails that come in from the solution that might be flagging certain concerns and things like that. But generally, the actual registration process at the front end requires no interaction from the staff. And if we go then to the next slide very quickly, just some practical recommendations and considerations. So essentially it is that before going into developing a whole fledged fully bot system and kind of developing that process from scratch, look at kind of what the capabilities of your existing systems are. So your system ones, your AccuRx, EMIS, etc. What do they offer in automation, and how can that be utilized and optimized? If you're looking at considering automation softwares, think about the ones that are already built for purpose and how they might match your purposes and goals and might be able to just kind of be locally tweaked and aligned. And then if there is a more kind of full-scale process that you're looking to do, that might be where robotic process automation is the kind of the winner there. So yeah, just making sure you're utilizing your systems and not kind of going for things that might be unnecessary burden and unnecessary cost for you, and ensuring that you're kind of following all the local government's standards that you need to meet in clinical standards. Again, we can give you more information on that towards the end or afterwards if you need us. So apologies for running over there, Dennis. I'll be quiet and then hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Ash. Okay, very good. So I'm just going to go through some of the practicalities of the program now. For those of you that joined the call a little late, I might just recap some of the points that Matt was making. So the program sets out to fund up to 10 automation pilots across London with a primary care focus. And the key purpose for the program is around delivering measurable efficiency gains, both in terms of cost saving and time saving, understanding the variety of automation solutions that are out there and how they differ across different use cases, and overall improving patient care and experience across London. So as I said, up to 10 grants will be awarded for this program, up to 65,000 each. We'll be assessing applications through a multi-stage process, and the successful applicants will be expected then to deliver a 12-month post-award pilot project, including pre-project and development time. So for those organizations considering developing bots and things like that, that's expected to be encompassed within that 12-month period. Successful applicants are also expected to agree to periodic reporting and monitoring, so we can obviously understand what's happening and the benefits and the challenges arising through those projects. And the final point around the structure is that we will be releasing funding on a phased basis as milestones are hit. Okay, in terms of the technologies that are in scope, it's quite broad. Effectively, we're open to off-the-shelf automation technologies or solutions requiring development. We're open to technologies that may be specific or non-specific to healthcare, so things coming in from other sectors, we're open to that. Technologies that target administrative or clinical processes, which we've already heard about. And we're also open to applications for projects that will utilize functionality within systems that you already have in place in practices. So that will be automation capabilities that haven't been explored or utilized or leveraged already within practices. In terms of things that are out of scope, so technologies which don't interface or integrate with the EPR or data sources, it's really critical that these things do integrate. Technologies that haven't secured regulatory compliance as well. That's too long of a journey, I think, for us to go on over that time period. And technologies which can't be adopted across other practices within the same PCN. So there's a real requirement here around scalability and ensuring that we're selecting solutions that will be able to scale so we can deliver that value. Okay. In terms then of who the applications are open to, primary care providers within London. It's open to individual practices or practices working collaboratively together via PCNs or federations or other informal collaboration groups. Partnerships between industry or academia are supported, provided that it's a primary care provider as the lead applicant. And applicants must have a named executive sponsor, a dedicated SRO with capacity to support the program. As I said, a lot of this is about soaking up learning, so it is a requirement to agree to the monitoring requirements. This is about implementing an automation solution in a real world setting. This isn't about funding academic research, so that's really critical as well. And also, obviously, sustainability and having a clear plan for post-pilot is a must. And of course, this will all be laid out in the application form as well. In terms of things that we're not funding, retrospective funding for projects underway is out of scope. There is obviously opportunity if you're doing something already in automation and there's a separate scope or a new use case to explore within your current project. I think that would be in scope. Replacing funding for mainstream healthcare provision is out of scope. Things like clinical trials, funding of master's and PhD costs are out of scope. Okay. In terms of the timeline then for the grants, so we're at the 18th of May today. The application window opens next week, opens for 8 weeks, closes on the 18th of July. The guidance notes and application forms will also be available from next week, along with the report that Ash alluded to. We'll be announcing the successful grants in August, and then there'll be some pre-project activities undertaken before first stage funding is awarded. We're expecting pilots to kick off then in September and run for 12 months. And as I said, there's a quarterly reporting requirement back to ourselves, who will be compiling data from each of those projects and feeding back into a final report at the end of the 12-month period. So in terms then of the review process, so we'll be initially reviewing applications coming through, making sure that they hit those minimum criteria. We'll then do a long listing. We're inviting some colleagues that are knowledgeable across the system to score applications, and then there will be a panel to judge the final successful applications. We may be contacting applicants post-application for some clarifications, but as I said, it's not a confirmation of receiving funding. In terms then of what's expected, and this is a little bit more detail about the process for applicants. So you can see here, once applications are submitted and clarifications are received, applicants that are deemed successful will be engaging with throughout August and September and working closely with those successful applicants. For those that haven't selected a supplier in their application, we'll be working with them to identify a supplier, lay out their plans for delivery of their project over the time period, and putting a contract in place with each of those providers. So provided those key milestones are met, first payment will be made, and that will start the delivery process of the awards program. Okay. So in terms then of the application form, so as I said, this will be going live on Monday as well. The sections, I won't go through it in great detail, but effectively what we're really interested in is applicants being really clear about the problem that they're addressing. So understanding the current state and the scale of the current problem, and then really understanding what they're proposing for a solution. And as I said before, we're not tying people down to having all the solution figured out or a provider identified, but having a clear view about how that problem will be addressed through automation is really critical. Also, we're expecting people to have a good idea about the resources that they'll be putting forth to deliver this work, the risks that they perceive, and the evaluation and benefits realization plans that they'll put in place in order so we can soak up that information and feed that out to the wider system. So that's really all I'll say about the application form. There is a guidance notes that will be sitting alongside the application form, which hopefully will explain anything that isn't 100% clear. But as I said, applications open next Monday. We have a web page set up on the HIN website where you'll have the application form, guidance notes, today's Q&A or the webinar recording, and the Q&A section. We also, as Ashley mentioned, we're producing a primary care automation report, and we're just in the final stages of sign off for that report. We're hoping that will be signed off and available from next week as well. And all inquiries will be coming through a central dedicated email address, which is hin.automationgrants@nhs.net. So I got through that as quickly as I can, because I'm hoping now we can move into a questions and answers session. And what I might do is just stop sharing my screen. And if you bear with me 1 minute. I think Ash has brought together a few of the questions.
Dennis, do you want me to jump in and answer a couple?
Yes, would you mind, Matt?
Yeah, okay. I just made a few notes as we're going through. So I think there's around IP expectations with most things of the Digital First programme is that the IP will be shared, like I suppose all blueprints, operational processes, learning how to implement, etc., will be shared and available to be shared. So it won't be, the IP is belongs to the NHS, and the expectation is if something is working really well in a local area, then actually you'd use that knowledge to then expand it across the other primary care practices or PCNs locally or across London or nationally. And the national team have got a website where there's about 2,000 or 3,000 blueprints already available. So the idea is that we share and learn across this programme. And we'll expect the pilots to come together on a monthly basis, share their learning, talk to each other and go on that journey together, because that's the best way that we learn. In terms of funding, there is 65k available. It's not based on population size. You may not all need the 65k, depending on the type of pilot you need, but that will cover any potential license cost, development costs, resources that you need, governance, etc. So there is a 65k and it's up to 65k per pilot. And scaling up, I think there was a question from Lucy. Potentially, if it's already a proven product that's already delivering, we probably wouldn't be looking to scale up as part of this program. But if you have a conversation with us, we'll have a look if there's any other opportunities to support you, and understand exactly what it is. But if something's already proven, we probably won't look at scaling up across a borough. But there might be other opportunities to fund that and work with you through other pots of funding or other programs. So we'd definitely be interested in looking at those opportunities with you.
And just to add on to the funding amount, Matt, and there's a question around how do we know if it covers, if it will be enough if the supplier isn't selected. So we did some modelling around the cost of a whole selection of suppliers, and we came out with that number as being a comfortable number to cover all costs, including software development and staff costs, project management costs. So that was one of the other questions we've had through. In terms of, do projects just have to be software-based, or can they comprise of hardware-based solutions, patient-facing machines, which then import data into EMIS to complete tasks? That we haven't been definitive around well, I haven't set a clear definition around what we mean by automation. It's quite broad. So I think if there is a specific application involving automation of any task, I suggest you get in touch with us and we'll discuss that further, but I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be included. Some of the other questions come through. Are you only going to consider one type of automation tool for a grant? For example, if a company had partnered with multiple different practices to apply for a grant. So we're looking to fund automation. So groups of practices can work together, if that's the question. So we could fund a group of practices looking to implement a tool. If the question is, would we fund a practice to implement several tools? Again, I think it's about laying out what the processes you're looking to automate are and how that fits in with that sort of cost envelope as well. Okay. So we've got a lot more things coming through on the chat here. Let me just go back to the start. I think there's one question that we missed, which was, what do you mean by meeting milestones? If we don't meet them, then we don't get awarded the money. So as I kind of showed on the flow chart, the first milestone for funding being awarded is around the development of a project initiation document and the selection of a supplier to move forward with, which that's the main trigger for the first funding release. There's also a funding release to ensure that we get regular reporting back. We're holding back some of the funding until the end to ensure that projects can feed back the information, the intelligence that they've gained. That'll be a small proportion of the funding, and then there'll be a midterm funding release as well. So I hope that answers that question.
I think there's a question around, can we apply as a practice of PCN? Practices or PCNs, I think we'll get better value, or you'll get better value out as working as a PCN, but we'll accept individual practices or PCNs or groups of PCNs or a borough-wide, but one pilot can only be funded up to a maximum of 65A, but you may want to top that up with other funding from, I suppose, PCN development funding or other pots of funding for Digital First or other local initiatives. So you may want to expand it wider, but use other funds and local investment as well.
And I think that ties into a question that around can successful applicants put money in after 1 year? I mean, I would see no reason why they couldn't.
And I think the key thing and the key message from this is that this is only to fund pilots, so it's not going to fund ongoing costs after that 1 year. That's why I think the evidence is crucial. The key thing out of all of the pilots is making sure that we can get robust benefits out of this to demonstrate the time saving and the other benefits that either you as a practice, PCN or borough, or potentially ICS will invest in going forward. So there's no commitment or additional pot of funding that I can see that can carry on the funding going forward. This is to demonstrate the benefits of automation and for local investment going forward, because we can see the benefits, but it will need to be invested locally going forward.
Yes, and in terms of the question around costs, covering admin and GP costs, so this isn't about, well, so that it's about developing of products. I think that funding backfill is perfectly fine. This isn't about, this should be taking away processes from clinical people, so it's not about funding more GPs. This is about funding project management resource, clinical backfill to get these projects delivered, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is covered within the cost. So can a provider have more than one grant, or is it one provider per grant? I don't see any reason why a single provider couldn't submit multiple applications. I think we've got 10 grants to put out across the whole of London. So I think if there are multiple processes you're looking to explore, it's a case of either consolidating them into a single grant or putting in multiple applications, and hopefully the strongest one will be selected.
And the applications need to come from primary care or PCN, so from practices or PCNs to put the application. It can't come from suppliers, so this needs to be primary care led.
There was also a comment as well about overestimating the time per month for batch messaging, and I think we were just highlighting some of the case studies that are currently underway. So just to be clear, this isn't our own work, and I think that work is still very much in process as well. So don't think that's definitive. Okay, so hopefully you'll all have seen that the web page that Carla has posted in the chat now as well, and that's where all the information will live about this program. And the email address as well is on that website and has also been put in by Carla into the chat. So hin.automation grants for follow-up queries. So you can see that's all the questions I have in front of me. I feel like we've missed one or two. We have a bit of time. Would anybody like to raise their hand?
Across the whole of London, it's never going to be individual practice unless that practice is like super hot on IT and has got lots of ideas themselves. Like West Green Medical Practice is like, they've won digital awards and things like that. No way. It's like a small little practice. I mean, unless they're super good, I think it's going to be like PCN, or Federation.
Yeah, I think, well, it's certainly one of the criteria we'll be judging applications against is the potential overall impact of the project. So we certainly don't want to dissuade any individual practices from applying. But that is a valid point. Aaron, would you like to come in? So you're on mute, Aaron.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for the information and the presentation. Considering putting in an application as a federation, and I just wanted to clarify with yourselves, what is the criteria you're going to use to assess the bids? Is it going to be geography, number of patients? Yeah, it would be really interesting to kind of understand what you base it on.
Sure, yeah.
In the guide, I think that will come out next week, that it'll talk about the scoring, but I think it covers around the key things, as I mentioned all the way through, or my bit was around the scale, the size, what it can offer, and the benefits, because there is no recurring funding for this, so we need to demonstrate the benefits from it. So it'd be clear, making sure the application's clear of this is the current process, these are the challenges around the current process, this is the estimated time it takes, and by putting X or Y, Z in, this is how much time we think that we can save, and the additional benefits. And we need to take into that all that consideration, and actually what you're proposing is, I suppose, deployable quite quickly as soon as the awards have been made. So we can't wait for something for a year to be developed before it can be deployed, because we've got the year from September to next September to demonstrate this works, and then collect the information to then share it. And we're going to look at each application based on an application base. In an ideal world, we'd get 1 or 2 applications that are good in each ICS, but we're going to take it based on the applications that come in, the scale of them, what they're going to deliver, and the benefits, and what's achievable. And then is that idea then scalable, if it's successful, scalable across other practices and PCNs and boroughs?
Excellent, thank you.
And as per Carla's, just to add to that, Carla's comment in the chat, the guidance notes will be going out next week. The window is open for 8 weeks. So if there's anything that's not clear, please do contact us. I'm happy to talk through that. Urvashi?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, 65K, is that per ICS or per any bidder?
It's per project, so per applicant.
Per applicant, okay. So if we were, for instance, put an application in, I'm from Havering, for across all 4 PCNs, then that would be 65K we would have to put for all 4 PCNs, or could we do 4 applications, 1 for each PCN?
Well, you could do either. It depends what you're trying to achieve, but it's 65K max per application.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I've had a few more questions come through. So yeah, I think that was one question from you. So once real benefits are realized from these pilot projects, is the idea that they get scaled up into other areas, and if scaled, would that come with funding? So that's a bit of a $1 million question. So there's so RPA is on the national product digital productivity agenda for NHS England. There's no confirmation of funding for that I'm aware of, but perhaps Matt, is there anything you're aware of future funding around RPA specifically?
No, I know there's a number of national initiatives that was capital funded last year and happening this year through the national programme. This has got revenue funding commitment for these 10 pilots, and we can't commit beyond this, and that's where the key bit is demonstrating the benefits for investment locally. So I suppose the vision for this is hopefully it will demonstrate the savings, and then practices or PCNs or even boroughs will come together to, I suppose, potentially invest in their own local bots that then can work behind the scenes supporting practices and PCNs, or doing stuff at a wider scale across a borough. So there's definitely no clear funding streams after these pilots, but we're expecting that 2 or 3 or maybe all 10 of the pilots will actually demonstrate a clear benefit that will then, as practices or PCNs, you'll invest in those bots to go forward. and we've demonstrated it works in primary care. There may be then opportunities to then bid for further funding for scaling, and we'll be very happy once we've got the data to then bid for further funding to try and scale things up. But within the NHS, normal funding only lasts for 1 or 2 years, and it's back down to then locally for investment decisions. So yes, we will be bidding on the back of this for additional funding. There is no guarantee that there is additional funding, but the benefit is that we're trying to test these different pilots within primary care, demonstrate that the bots or the software can deliver a benefit, because it's not widely used in primary care. And when we've spoken to clinicians, they want someone to demonstrate that it does work and it can add a benefit to their practice or PCN.
Thanks, Matt. So we have quite a few people with their hands up. So we're going to go Donna, then Saeed, then Raza.
Hi, thanks. My question was actually just in terms of the application, it mentions about having a named executive sponsor. Can you just give an example as to what that means?
So that would be a partner, I would expect,
okay.
at practice level, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Saeed?
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation, really clear. I wanted to ask if we have identified a number of different processes which have potential high return on investment in terms of efficiency savings. Would an application looking at a number of different processes be looked on more favorably than an application focusing on one discrete kind of process, or is that open? I'd be really interested to hear what your kind of viewpoint on that is.
So I think there's a few things in that. One is what can be achieved within the cost envelope, certainly a factor. So it's about feasibility of the application. Yeah, I think, yeah, we need to be really realistic about some of the input that needs to go into developing some of these. I mean, that's certainly the experience we've seen speaking to other primary care stakeholders that have gone down this route so far. So that would be certainly my main take on it. I think it depends what the processes are. So again, it's about assessing the overall impact, the amount of time that potentially could be saved. Perhaps I'll invite Matt in to share his views.
And depending on how many I suppose what you're talking about, it could mean that you might want to put in 2 different applications covering a number of different PCNs within that local geographical footprint. Because normally with the pilots, it never works if one pilot site is trying to do multiple tasks and processes, because it takes a while to agree the process, develop the bot, test it, and go live. So one of the considerations will be, is what you're proposing achievable within the timelines? And it might be better to put in 2 separate bids covering different PCNs used if it's using the same product locally. And then if there are lots of good ones after this, we can only afford to fund the 10. We will look at other opportunities going forward, so that if there are something that actually that was a really good idea, doesn't meet this criteria, we've got that information to then explore with national teams or other organisations to see if we can get funding support.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Raza, and then Nosheen.
Yeah, hi, really useful presentations. Thank you so much. The slides are very, very clear, really good. My question is, as with most things in the NHS, I've been involved with sort of projects that kind of kick off really good ideas, and then after the grant phase, they kind of die off. I think part of the problem is trying to get an idea about the vehicle post year 1, because if the IP is owned by the NHS, I'm just seeing how we're going to get involvement of people to maintain and support those ideas as you move forward into local areas and scale up. Just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
I think just as we said earlier, there is no guaranteed funding stream going forward. I suppose as we start with the pilot sites, maybe in 6 months' time, we'll actually identify there is benefits coming out here, and then that gives us the opportunity to try to influence next year's spend. Or we might need to wait till we've got some more detail to put in business cases or explore other opportunities. I think going through the pilot sites, the digital first team and the regional team will be working alongside each pilot site to support if so it doesn't fall off the edges, or if there are any challenges, we can then provide some support to you locally. So
what I'm trying to say is that if the IP is owned by the NHS,
yep.
You're implying that there needs to be some kind of NHS vehicle within each area to be able to provide the solution moving forward, or will that be jointly managed with a accredited company? I'm just trying to work out how we're going to move forward and convert this from a pilot stage into something which is deployable and scalable and maintainable within the NHS.
But we might need a little bit more advice on IP, but in terms of blueprinting operations, how you implemented it, the outcomes, and how it works, I think it should just be shareable across the NHS. How an individual software vendor has got the code behind it isn't NHS. I suppose I'm guessing that NHS IP, but the whole documentation about this is a process, this is what it's done, this is how we've changed it, and these are the benefits and the saving is shareable across the NHS.
Okay, that's different to what I thought. Okay, thanks. That's brilliant.
And also, I don't think most cases probably wouldn't have much IP associated with them. They'll be off-the-shelf solutions that just configured for local needs. But yeah, it's certainly a consideration we need to think about. Sorry, I beg your pardon. It is Nosheen. Is that right? Nosheen, have you still your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of has been covered. Thanks, Matt and Dennis, for the presentation. Working for UCL Partners, so helping a lot of the practices in North and East London, matching them up with suppliers. The question I had was, if you have a supplier that's popular and most practices want to apply with that one supplier, would that put them at a disadvantage? If you've only got 10 grants, I presume you're not going to give 5 of them to one supplier. You want a range of automation tools. So would it be beneficial to kind of, try to get practices using different types of tools rather than, the one that's popular? Would that give them a better chance of winning the grant?
Well, I think as we set out in terms of the objectives of the program, it's about understanding the impact of different solutions across different use cases. So that certainly will be factored in to the final in the decision-making process. So I think there's a question there, again, back to the impact. If one supplier is going to provide impact across multiple use cases, I don't think it needs to be about consolidating around single suppliers or anything. I think it's about trying to understand the market more generally and the applications more generally.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So we have Joseph, Aaron, and then back to Donna.
Hi, good afternoon. I've got a slightly kind of technical question about bots and, for instance, if they were looking at blood results or something like that, and whether you've looked into needing kind of MHRA approvals, a medical device and things like that, and if there would be support around that if that is the case. I noticed kind of in one of your exclusions, it says kind of processes that haven't got regulatory approval yet, but you also in your inclusions, you're open to people kind of providing new solutions. So I was wondering about that.
It's a really good question. Yeah, perhaps I might ask Ash to come in if there's anything being picked up through the market review about CE marking regulatory compliance.
Sorry, I missed that because I was replying to a message in the chat. So would you mind just repeating, Joseph? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's about whether kind of in a broad sense, some of these bots are going to require MHRA approval under a medical device, and if the HIN's looked into that as part of the project.
Yeah, we've certainly done it as part of kind of our market review, and the ones that we've engaged with have been asked to around kind of their DTAC compliance, their MHRA compliance, DCB 1029s and things like that. Some of them, so within the kind of supplier overview table we've put together, that whether they meet that criteria or not have been identified and listed to give you guys a good kind of starting point. And for those that aren't, some of them is because the solution doesn't have a clinical impact kind of thing. If it's around kind of data management, reporting things like that. So it might be that certain solutions don't need to go down that route, and I think it's just being very kind of clear on asking the right questions of the suppliers to make sure that they've kind of covered all the bases that they need for their specific use case, if that makes sense.
And your exclusion criteria said it would be excluded projects that haven't yet got regulatory approval. But obviously, if people are kind of adapting or making their own bots or automation systems, it might become apparent that that's needed. So it's not going to be possible. It's not going to be possible necessarily to know. So you could on applying for the grant.
Yeah.
Certainly, they're going to have to factor into the feasibility assessment of any project. I mean, if there are that many unknowns and it's likely to turn out to be a medical device, then it will sit outside of the inclusion criteria. So I'm afraid we don't have a definite answer on that one, but I think what we need to do is perhaps think about that a little bit more and add a bit more to our guidance document before Monday about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aaron, and then back to Donna. Are they all done?
I put my hand down, but because I put the question in the chat, but it was just to say, can we have a list of the processes that are being developed centrally, just so that we're not bidding to do something that's already got been planned for?
So when you say centrally, do you mean through the EPR providers, or what do you mean by that?
So through any of the digital teams. So we've seen that it's likely there's going to be something developed for patient registrations. So anything like that that's on the horizon, it would be really helpful if we could see that.
Yeah, I understand that. So that's all included within our the automation review that Ash spoke about earlier. So within that document, there's a market review identifying quite a number of different suppliers. There's also quite a few use cases that we've picked up across the country that are included within that document. But again, I don't think because one region is looking at call and recall isn't a reason not to do it somewhere else as well.
Okay.
That makes sense. So I'm conscious we've just run over time and I don't see any further hands up. So hopefully that's
I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I just wanted to understand how we connect with you guys. I've created an automation company already, and I'm already automating workload, and I'm presenting at the UNISNUG conference in June, as well as the best practice show to kind of take things forward and actually kind of share it with primary care. So my company is called GP Automate, and I want to know how I liaise with you guys, because I've already spent months developing this and have 3 use cases already on registration, batch messaging, and normal lab reporting.
Okay.
And I'm working on referrals as well as different types of forms that you can integrate and code
Sure,
into
understand.
EMIS.
So in the context of this scope, so we're expecting applications come through provider organizations. So if you have some champions that you're working with, we suggest you go to them to engage through this process. If it's more generally to talk about your work and process automation, I suggest you still contact us through HIN automation grants, and we'll link you in with people in Matt's team and the national team who are delivering work in that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so we've run slightly over time, but I'm hoping that's been useful for most people on the call. And as I said, all the information will be hosted on the website. We look forward to hearing from you and hopefully getting loads of interesting applications and working with you over the next 18 months or so. So I will end the session there, and just to say a big thanks again for everybody taking the time today.
Thank you.